Which ping fairway wood should you be using? Today we're going to be checking out all the different loft options across the fairway woods and hybrids to find out how you should be gapping your bag. So when it comes to consumers fitting out their full bag, often it's quite easy to pick a driver and they've probably already got their irons, but then that gap in the middle can be a little bit trickier. So what would be your starting point for kind of picking the best fairway wood or even hybrid option for consumers?
You're looking at what the longest iron they're going to be using. Going back some years when we first fitting, our golf clubs all started at 1 iron originally, 1 iron, 2 iron, 3 iron. 3 irons and 4 irons are far more difficult to hit, as everybody will know that the longer irons is more difficult to use. We're finding less and less people using a 4 iron and starting more at a 5 and sometimes even a 6 iron. And that's where, we've got sort of the lofted hybrids coming in. We do up to a 7 hybrid in a loft. Getting the right golf club that's easy to use, they're easier to use and more consistent. From a fairway wood point of view, what fairway wood you go in, you generally want to know how the player wants to use the fairway wood. Do they want to hit it off the tee as well as off the fairway? So if somebody's wanting to hit off the tee and get, as an alternative to the driver, get a bit of distance, sometimes they would tend to fit into the 3 wood. If it's purely off the fairway, sometimes we find that people don't really generate enough spin to keep the 3 wood in the air, and they would benefit from a more lofted fairway wood, and that's where we'll go to a 5 wood. And then 5 woods, 7 woods, and certainly 9 woods. 7 woods are certainly becoming far more popular within the game with, better players. And sometimes it's a perception thing. I'm not a good player if I'm using that, which is complete rubbish, because if you're a player, you want to use the best tool for the job. And so that's where the fitting comes in vitally important.
Yeah, I think I've always used hybrids at kind of that 3 or 4 distance, but then you see a lot more on tour now. People are getting more into the 7 and 9 woods, people like Leona. So how would people decide if they're going to go for a high lofted fairway wood or a hybrid?
Again, a little bit to do with the flight and distance. What flight do they like to see, and sometimes where they're playing. If you're playing on a course that's quite windy, maybe on the coast, a links course, you may want to get the flight down, so that's where you may go to one or the other that's going to flight it a little bit lower. So that's what it's really down to. It's all down to your gapping and distance and how you like to see the ball.
Well, perfect. Let's go hit a few of the different options and kind of see what the differences in performance are. So I personally always use a 4 hybrid over a fairway wood. I think it'd be really interesting to hit a few shots with this and then go into the 7 wood, which would be the equivalent, and kind of see what the differences are.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. Try this and we'll see the flights.
So typically between the two, which would you see as the highest, or is there a other advantage to one over the other?
The hybrids tend to go a little bit higher, but again, they're very different shaft lengths as well, so you may find that difference, but you may find one is easier to manipulate than the other, and you might be able to feel as though you can hit more different shots with one over the other.
I think that's what I like about hybrids as well. I feel like if you're in the rough or the lie is not perfect, it's not that big of a club head to sit behind the ball.
Exactly, that's slightly smaller club head when you've got a little bit of rough there.
So if we look at that data in terms of height, would that be pretty high?
Height's very relative to the user and the shots. There's a little bit of difference there. The second one was very thin, wasn't it? So yeah, that height's very relative to the player. That was it was a nice high flight, but is that something you like? Is that something you don't like? Where do you play? Are you playing in the wind? If you go into a course that's a little bit windy, you may want to knock it down a little bit.
Yeah, my home course is quite hilly, so it can kind of suit high shots, but then I play a lot of tournaments on links golf, so therefore high shots isn't always the best if you're going straight into a headwind.
Yeah, let's have a look at the 7 one and see how that goes.
What's quite nice about this is because the head's bigger, it doesn't look as though there's as much loft on it. I think visually it's quite nice behind the ball. That launched a lot higher, didn't it?
Did launch a lot higher, that one, yeah.
I really like the ball flight, but it is very high.
Yeah.
I think if I was suddenly going to play in America tomorrow, it's the kind of club you'd love that high ball flight into the green. But over here on links golf.
Well, you can see it is a higher flight. It is certainly a higher flight. It's carrying, probably 10 yards further. That last shot, which you'll have caught in a slightly different place in the face, so the spin's just dropped down a little bit. You probably caught that a little bit higher in the face than the first one. the spin's a little bit lower, and of course it's gone another 10 yards of carry.
Yeah, that's carried nearly as far as my 3-wood does.
You're averaging 10 yards further, but the hybrid was a far more consistent shot, even with that middle one, which was a little bit thin, and you could see it flew a little bit lower, so your total distance was longer.
So then when you're moving into the longer woods in someone's bag, is there ever a case for them using like 5-wood instead of a 3-wood, or maybe even like a 3-wood with a 5-wood shaft, just because it's easier to control?
Yeah, absolutely. 3-wood, a lot of people will find that they're not spinning it enough. So if they're using it, as I said, purely as a fairway wood, they don't generate enough spin on it to keep it in the air. So we'll often find that a 5-wood will go just as far as the 3-wood, if not further, because they're getting better spin characteristics on it and keeping the ball in the air. So it will carry further. It might not run out quite as much, but it's carrying further. So then you need to decide what is it you're looking to achieve with your fairway wood.
Yeah, if you need to carry it over a bunker to get somewhere, then you need the extra carry. But if you're somewhere really flat that links, maybe that allows you to run up into the greens, maybe you take something that releases out more. Maybe we should hit some shots with a 5 and a 3-wood and see what that difference is in terms of gapping.
Yeah, we can do that as well.
Okay, so we're starting with the 3-wood. It's an interesting club for a lot of club golfers. They don't like hitting it off the deck. I would include myself in that. I don't know why. I think it's just a...
Yeah, again, just a straighter face on the fairway, similar to that reason why people don't like 3-irons as much.
Yeah.
You know, it's the longest fairway wood. So you can see that's quite a low flight there. That was a better one nearer the middle of the face.
If you were looking for a point where it needs to fly high enough, like how high is high enough, if that makes sense?
Again, it's down to the golfer. What one golfer's high as another one's low. You know, I'm not going to put my preferences on you as a golfer, because, you know, we can be two totally different golfers. So it really is down to that golfer. The difference between a 3 and look at dispersions and look at the distances they go in. So what do you think to that last flight?
I like that height. I think it's a nice height.
Yeah, I mean, I was of the same opinion. I thought that was a good flight, but again, it's not for me. So again, just a little bit out the bottom of the club on that one.
But it's still got a nice...
Yeah, it still went okay.
Which I think is obviously what you're looking for, because you're not going to strike it perfect every time.
Yeah, I mean, you can see other than the first shot, which was, you know, sort of probably you're just getting used to the club, the next 3 are all very, very similar. You know, 197 carry, 199 and 199.9, so all but 200-yard carry.
But it is quite interesting that it's only like 10 yards difference between like kind of that and the 7-wood, which I think people would expect it to be a bigger gap.
Well, let's try the 5-wood and see how you hit that one.
That ball flight felt nice.
Nearer the middle of the club head.
And it went quite high.
And did it go a lot higher than the 3-wood?
But it didn't seem to fly that much shorter. I think it's quite interesting over the ball though, because visually for me I always feel uncomfortable like with a 3-wood in the fairway. Whereas I think because this has a bit more loft, like it looks nicer behind the golf ball.
And that's a big thing in golf, is a confidence. It's a confidence thing. But actually you've hit your 3-wood, the last 3 shots with your 3-wood were really good.
Yeah.
You did hit them well. So you can see it certainly does fly higher than the 3-wood.
That was probably my best strike so far, I would say. So it'd be interesting to see what the difference is between that. So yeah.
So you're looking at about 5 yards difference in carry. So if you ignore that first 3-wood that you hit, which was a poor strike, you're about 5 yards further with your 3-wood than you are the 5-wood, which again isn't a huge amount.
I think it's quite interesting for someone who, like, I wouldn't necessarily pull my 3-wood out on the course because I just don't feel comfortable with it. Yep. So a lot of time I'm missing out on going for, say, a par 5 and 2 just because I don't feel comfortable pulling that club out, whereas just changing to something like a 5 with a little bit more loft, only losing 5 yards carry isn't massive.
No.
And it allows me to actually be aggressive and go into those holes just by, like, tweaking my bag setup a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think all this testing just kind of highlights the importance of trying the different options and maybe always sticking to what you're used to or picking the most obvious option, because there are lots of different ways to get the golf ball around the course, and having different options like this is going to fit your game the best.
try all of them. You know, that's what we would always do here, is just try and get the best fit for the golfer.